Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semuanya. Yang terhormat Rektor Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Bapak Profesor Dr. Sutrisno Wibawamsidi. Yang kami hormati para pembicara, Dr. Ludwig Tilburg University, Profesor Dr. Komarudin Hidayat, Guru Besar UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, Profesor Brian Stoll, Bangsa dan Sydney University, dan yang kami hormati Dekan, Wakil Dekan, seluruh unsur pimpinan lingkungan Fakultas Ilmu Sosial Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, yang kami hormati perwakilan dari Kopos, University Teknologi Malang Malaysia, Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Universitas Negeri Malang, Universitas Metro Lampung, Universitas Bunda Mulia Jakarta, Indonesian Association of History Education, dan juga seluruh peserta konferensi internasional yang berbahagia.
The Honorable Rector of Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Professor Dr. Sutrisno Wibowo MPD, the invited speakers, Professor Brian Stoll, Western Sydney University, Australia, Professor Dr. Komarudin Hidayat, UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, Dr. Ruth Louise, Tilburg University, Deans, Vice Deans, Head of Department, Faculty of Social Sciences, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, presenters and participants from co-host University and Association Representative, University Teknologi Mara Malaysia, Universitas Negeri Jakarta, Universitas Negeri Malang, Universitas Metro Lampung, Universitas Bunda Mulia, Indonesian Association of History Education Study Program, all participants, ladies and gentlemen.
Puji syukur kehadiran Tuhan Yang Maha Esa, pada hari ini kita bisa bersama-sama bertemu secara virtual dalam rangkaian acara konferensi internasional Social Science and Education yang keempat dengan tema Reconstructing Moral, Education, and Social Sciences for Achieving Sustainable Development Goals yang akan dilaksanakan pada tanggal 4 hingga tanggal 5 Agustus tahun 2020.
First of all, praise be to God, the one Almighty, who has given us His blessing and guidance, without which we could not participate in the 4th International Conference of Social Sciences and Education on Reconstructing Moral, Education, and Social Sciences for Achieving Sustainable Development Goals. This conference is organized by the Faculty of Social Sciences, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, from 4 to 5 August 2020.
Hadirin, sebelum dimulai, marilah sejenak kita menundukkan kepala untuk mengucap syukur kehadirat Tuhan Yang Maha Esa agar acara pada hari ini bisa berjalan dengan lancar.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed to this agenda, please be silent and bow our head for a moment to have a prayer. Let's say our prayer, shall we?
Menyanyikan lagu Indonesia Raya.
Singing the national anthem of Indonesia Raya.
Sambutan Dekan Fakultas Ilmu Sosial Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta yang terhormat Dr. Suhadi Purwantoro MSI, disilahkan.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next session will be a welcoming speech that will be delivered by the Dean of Faculty of Social Sciences, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Dr. Suhadi Purwantoro MSI. The floor is yours.
Organized by Faculty of Social Sciences, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, 4 to 5 4th to 5th August 2020. Distinguished speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, in this occasion, I would like to thank the Rector of Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Professor Dr. Sutrisno Wibowo, who has facilitated the committee to organize the 4th ICSSED. Also, I would like to extend my gratitude to speakers for your willingness to speak at the 4th ICSSED. I believe your expertise, knowledge, and experience will bring great benefit to all of us here. My gratitude also goes to all presenters or participants who take part in this conference and the committee of the 4th ICSSED who have worked hard to prepare this event. Distinguished speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to inform you that the 4th ICSSED is participated by 169 presenters and 247 participants, consisting of lecturers, students, researchers, and practitioners. The conference is conducted via Zoom and YouTube platforms due to the many restrictions caused by COVID-19 pandemic. Distinguished speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, almost every day we face various problems ranging from economic, cultural, social, and political problems. The new the news that we read and hear all the time are related economic, sociological, and abuse of official power. In this regard, scientists certainly do not keep silent. Scientists, especially lecturers, researchers, and students, are required to solve the problems both at the regional, national, even international levels. This conference is held to provide a platform for researchers, lecturers, students, practitioners to showcase their latest research findings, knowledge, and experience. It is expected this forum may contribute ideas and offer alternative solutions to overcome the problems for the government and the wider community. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Faculty Social Sciences Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, I would like to ask your apology for any inconvenience during this conference. I hope you enjoy the conference, get great benefits from joining this conference. Finally, I kindly request to the Rector of UNY, Professor Dr. Sutrisno Wibowo, to officially declare this conference open. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bapak Ibu peserta konferensi internasional yang berbahagia, untuk meresmikan acara pada hari ini, marilah kita dengarkan bersama sambutan Rektor Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Profesor Dr. Sutrisno Wibowo MPD. Disilahkan.
Distinguished speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, now we invite the Rector of Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta to give a speech, at the end of which we kindly request the Rector to officially declare this international conference open. Straight afterwards, Professor Dr. Sutrisno Wibowo MPD, the floor is yours.
Rektornya ada suaranya.
Masih belum masuk suaranya Pak Rektor.
Halo? Halo? The fourth International Conference of Social Science and Education, Profesor Dr. Komarudin Hidayat from Universitas Islam Negeri Sariwijaya, Jakarta, Indonesia. Dr. Louis PhD from Tilburg University, the Netherlands. Professor Brian from Australia, School of Social Sciences, Western Sydney University. Participant, the Dean of Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Social Science Education, ladies and gentlemen, may peace and God's blessing be upon all of us. First of all, let me express my sincere and warm welcome to all speakers and participants to Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta or Yogyakarta State University. I would also like to thank you all for coming to this conference. I hope that today's conference will be a good forum to share ideas, best practices, and research finding related to the reconstructing moral, education, and social sciences for achieving sustainable development goal (SDGs). Distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta or Yogyakarta State University is among universities with a strong commitment to the achievement of SDGs, not only SDG number 4, the sustainable education, but also other the SDGs. Many programs in Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Yogyakarta State University, are designed to support the achievement of SDGs. An example of such program is the model of character education. This model is driven by Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta commitment to improve moral education. Much research has been done as an effort to reconstruct moral education. Education itself and the concept of social education to achieve the SDGs. Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta believe that the achievement of SDGs is expected to provide better environment for the world population to grow and learn. It is in turn will help create the world at a better place to live. Distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, in this very occasion, I would also like to express appreciation and gratitude to all community members who have worked hard to make this conference possible. Finally, I hope that all the speakers and participants enjoy the friendly atmosphere of Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta State University, and can contribute optimally to the development of moral, education, and social sciences. I wish all of you a fruitful discussion. By Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I declare the 4th International Conference, Social Science and Education officially open. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Matur nuwun Pak Rektor.
Hadirin sekalian, memasuki acara inti, yaitu pemaparan materi dari para pembicara. Dan sebagai pembicara pertama adalah Profesor Brian Stolt, Western Sydney University. Pembicara kedua Dr. Ruth Luij, Tilburg University. Pembicara ketiga Profesor Dr. Komarudin Hidayat, Guru Besar UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta. Dan akan dipandu oleh Bapak Adi Cilik Piarawan PhD. Dan kemudian dilanjutkan dengan sesi tanya jawab.
Distinguished speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving to the plenary session of the conference. The three outstanding speakers, Professor Brian Stott from Western Sydney University, Australia, Professor Dr. Komarudin Hidayat from UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, and Dr. Ruth Luij from Tilburg University will be presenting their ideas during this plenary session. The session will be chaired by Adi Cilik Piarawan PhD. To Adi Cilik Piarawan PhD, the floor is yours.
First of all, Honorable Rektor Universitas Negeri Yogyakarta, Bapak Sutrisno Wibowo, the Honorable Bapak the Dean of Faculty of Social Science, Dr. Suhadi Purwantoro, and also the distinguished and invited speakers here. We have Brian Stott from the Western Sydney University, and Ruth Luij from Tilburg University, and the last one is Professor Komarudin Hidayat from Universitas Islam Negeri Syarif Hidayatullah. Before we begin for this plenary session, we would like to give some introduction of this conference. And we are happy and then we are lucky here to have three speakers here, quite diverse. This is from Netherlands and also from Netherlands, Indonesia, and also Australia, with a diverse academic background. Prof. Brian Stott working in social work, and Professor Komarudin Hidayat working in religion and also philosophy of religion, and the third one, Dr. Ruth Luij, working on sociology, on especially and methodology. And without further ado, I think I would like to introduce Professor Brian Stott. He is a professor in social work in Western Sydney University, and also at the same time he is the Dean of Social Sciences. School of Social Sciences, Western Sydney University, and also the provost at the Liverpool campus at the same university. I think for this opportunity, we will invite first Professor Brian to talk about social science education and the sustainable development goals. I think we would like invite Prof. Brian. Are you there, Prof. Brian? Okay. Hi, Brian. As you. Okay. 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 Brilliant. Yeah. Then you have.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak today, and for all the organization to make this event happen. I know that it is not, the conference is not running as it has done in previous years, but a phenomenal amount of work goes into setting these things up by Zoom. So thank you for the opportunity, and I am very sorry not to be able to be with you in Indonesia today, but I'm sure we will understand the circumstances. Do you mind if I ask if people who are listening are able to put it on mute? Because at the moment I'm hearing feedback of my own talk, and it's quite difficult to hear. Thank you. That's much clearer. I want to talk today about social science education and the sustainable development goals. So the moral education of social science students has traditionally focused on training in ethical decision making, or in socialization into the values of the profession that they're training for, such as social work. But more recently, there has been a shift in focus of this moral education, with an expansion in simply training students to make ethical decisions, an emphasis on global citizenship and their responsibilities to the wider world. What I'd like to do in this paper is to present how the UN Sustainable Development Goals have provided an emphasis for universities to put global citizenship at the centre of moral education. What I'll do first is talk about the shift at an institutional level, and how Time Higher Education rankings has directed the university sector to adjust its perspective on how success in STEAM can be judged. Secondly, I'll then talk about how an interest in sustainable development goals has impacted on curriculum, on teaching, and on student experience. And finally, I'll talk a little bit about demonstrating the necessity of our students and graduates understanding their roles and responsibilities as global citizens. So, moral education is not a term that appears generally in Australia, but how social science graduates have always been trained in values and in ethics. And my own background is in social work, and it's primarily been a feature of social work education, which has traditionally been based around the idea of training in knowledge, skills, and values, with every accredited social work program required to include some material in preparing practitioners for the values that they will need to demonstrate in their practice. The School of Social Sciences at Western Sydney University has a large social work program. Probably a third of our students are trained in social work, but we train in other social sciences as well, in criminology, in geography, anthropology, sociology, and in therapy and counselling. And we prepare all our graduates for the ethical decisions that they will need to make in their lives and their employment. We've developed a core curriculum at undergraduate level, which requires all students to be trained in particular subjects. And one of those subjects is in ethics, which ensures that all students know the importance of ethical decision making. More recently, however, there's been a shift in the emphasis of the moral education of our students. And the shift in the emphasis has been not so much away from ethical decision making, but a broadening of the approach and a focus on preparing students for their role as global citizens and a focus on creating a sustainable and the need to create a sustainable and just society for all. So to achieve this, what our students need to do is not only learn about ethical decision making in the scenarios that they face in their lives, but to put this in a context of the community and society where they will live and work. A main drive in this has been the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. What I'll talk about is how this has now become a major focus for universities, and talk about how it translates into the student experience. So for those of you, and I know many of you are very familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, but there may be people who are listening who don't know them so well. They're a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and improve the lives and prospects of everyone everywhere. The 17 goals were adopted by all UN member states in 2015 as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which sets out a 15-year plan to achieve the goals. The SDGs are a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all, addressing the global challenges faced by the world, including those related to poverty, inequality, climate change, environmental degradation, peace and justice. 17 goals are all interconnected, and it's the stated mission of the UN to achieve all by 2030. So you can see there as on the slide, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with how this is set out. The goals of no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice and strong institutions, and partnerships to achieve those goals. Progress is being made in all areas, but I think it's accepted by the UN and by all who are promoting the goals that the action to meet the goals isn't advancing at the speed or the scale required, and that in 2020 the United Nations has set out an ambition to usher in a decade of ambitious actions to achieve the goals. From a university point of view, in a globally connected, competitive environment, universities are very conscious of their profile and their reputation, particularly with regard to global rankings. So universities are judged on their rankings in the world, and particularly their research performance, their research income, their international engagement is strongly influenced by how they're ranked within the world as compared to other universities and other countries. These rankings have traditionally focused on research performance and have measured factors such as quality and quantity of publications, citations, and reputation. However, in 2019, one of the world's leading rankings agency, the Times Higher Education, launched a new form of rankings focused on impact and on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It was an extremely welcome development, and it foregrounded the importance of the SDGs in the university sector. Western Sydney University has done extremely well in these rankings. In 2019, they were placed 11th in the world and first in Australia. In 2020, we improved the performance. To be ranked third in the world. Western Sydney University is amongst a group of four universities from Australia and New Zealand that now hold the top 4 places in these world rankings. As well as a strong achievement in the overall rankings, the university has also performed extremely well on the rankings on individual goals, most notably with regard to gender equity, where we ranked #1 in the world in 2019. So out of 859 universities in 89 countries who submitted to be judged in the SDGs, Western Sydney was 3rd in the world, 2nd in Australia. We're top 5 in the world on 6 of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and top 10, which in 7 of the 17, which I think may have been the highest figure of anywhere in the world. So, although I'm not always pleased to showcase the achievements of my university, the purpose of the presentation is not simply to talk about how great Western Sydney University has been in achieving these goals. I think what is important is to consider how this emphasis on these rankings has changed the approach of universities and the direction of universities and the sector as a whole, both nationally and globally, and how that direction can be assessed, can be established by considering what is measured and how it is measured. The score in the rankings is made up from 3 aspects: from research performance, operations, and engagement. And Western Sydney's achievement of being so highly ranked in the world is built in two main ways. Firstly, there is a genuine strategic commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals, and I will talk about that in the next slide. But secondly, there is also a tactical approach. As it is with all rankings, it's important what you measure, how you present, and the emphasis that you take. And the university, and Western Sydney University, has put considerable effort into ensuring that its achievements and its progress are properly recognised and properly measured. Universities are SDG 17, the Partnerships for the Goals, is one of the compulsory aspects and has a high weighting in how the rankings are measured. And it's important for universities that the partnerships that they work in are properly recorded, properly reported upon, and are linked to the and are linked to the submission for the goals. Similarly, achievements such as an Employer of Choice badge that is a national mark for the university that can provide very strong evidence for a submission to be measured against the goals. But what is probably most important is that that Western Sydney University has strategically placed the Sustainable Development Goals at the heart of the university's mission. It has invested in supporting research themes that are related to the SDGs, including in education, environment and sustainability, health and urban living. The university's external engagement also contributes towards its SDG achievements. It's located in Western Sydney, an area of high socioeconomic need, and its engagement strategy, including in campus building and regional growth, is led by the imperative of supporting the people of the region. Again, this is achieved through partnerships with other educational institutions, local government, and public and private partners in the health sector. So everything that the university does, whether it is in research, in education, in its governance and operation approach, but particularly in its public engagement, how it works with the people of the region and its partners around the world, is crucially important for its achievement within the SDGs. So that covers where we are strategically as a university. But what I'll move on to talk about now is how the SDGs have affected the student experience and how the learning of the students that we teach is influenced by our focus on the SDGs. And what we would say is that they are an appropriate way of instilling moral values to students. So how we deal with moral education, how we think about moral education, cuts across the sub-themes of the Sustainable Development Goal. And for example, the quality education, the curriculum of social studies, our teaching on diversity, the multicultural approach that we take to all our curriculum, and the development of youth, both in terms of the development of the students we teach ourselves and the content of what we teach them, all move towards this idea of our graduates being global citizens. So the impact of the students on students of the university's engagement in the Sustainable Development Goals is seen in curriculum initiatives. This curriculum transformation starts with a structural change to facilitate curriculum development. The university promotes a curriculum structure that has flexibility to allow interdisciplinary learning and the easy insertion of curriculum material into programs across the whole institution. Within that structure, we can readily include material on the SDGs at a variety of volumes and at a variety of levels. So by creating a flexible curriculum structure, by allowing our students to take units and groups of units from their own school and from other schools, that allows us to ensure that material on sustainable development goals is taught to all our students and is available to all our students. So this includes, for example, what we call curiosity pods, which are small amounts of learning between a few days and a week, or even a few hours and a week, that can be taken by any student on any program. They're usually outside the standard curriculum and don't always have a formal assessment structure. However, it is possible to put these curiosity pods together into a formal unit and add that learning to the formal assessed curriculum. These pods allow material on sustainability to be studied by anyone with an interest in the subject, regardless of their choice of degree or major. More substantially, in terms of volume, sub-majors are groups of 4 units on a particular topic. Again, they can be taken by students on a whole variety of programs, allowing sustainability material to be incorporated into a wide variety of degrees across the whole university. And thirdly, combined degrees provide the flexibility to allow students to put together a variety of subjects into one degree, again, allowing the required material for an accredited or employment-focused qualification to be combined with material on sustainability. Our teaching on the sustainable development goals is an ethics and a practice and not simply an endpoint. Although sustainable development education is incorporated into units and programs and is therefore accredited and assessed, there is more to education in this area than simply the meeting of learning outcomes and the achievement of marks and credits. The development of sustainability literacy requires new ways of thinking and learning to draw connections between environmental concerns, social patterns, social justice, and individual actions. These subjects are not taught in one class and not even in one unit, but they run right throughout a program and a course of study. We teach justice and equity throughout all our programs, but particularly focus on these issues in our criminology, criminal justice, and policing units and programs. So, although sustainable development the SDGs are and the principles of them run through all our teaching on all our programs, and we teach the sub majors, we teach the pods that can fit in a variety of places. It's also important to cover sustainability specifically and directly. It can be covered in units. It can be covered in sub majors, which, as I've said before, are groups of 4 units. Majors, which are groups of 8 units, or in full degrees. The majors and sub-majors that we cover in the university include global sustainability, social ecology, sustainable futures, responsible design and sustainability, climate change, peace and development, geography and urban studies, heritage and tourism, sustainability, and an environmental major. So you can see a variety of aspects of the SDGs being covered in that way. These fit into a whole variety of programs, including in design and technology, medical science, social sciences, tourism, business administration, and engineering. The structure of the programs are flexible enough to facilitate these majors and sub-majors, allowing them to be studied by students of a variety of programs, drawing connections across a series of disciplines. As well as studying these sub-majors and majors as part of their degrees, students are also able to study sustainability outside of formally accredited programs. We talked about the curiosity pods before, but one other aspect is the sustainability boot camp. And what this boot camp does is allow students from a variety of programs to learn together about sustainability, bringing together their own perspectives, skills, and body of knowledges, And what that means is that students who might be studying science subjects or social science subjects or education or psychology can come together, bringing a whole variety of perspectives and approaches, and learn together and work together on matters to do with the Sustainable Development Goals. And from that work, it's not assessed in a traditional way. It's assessed in what we would describe as an authentic assessment, where the way that the assessment is carried out is closely linked to the learning and to the outcomes and to the experience of the students. So what the students are asked to do is to create what is called a Sustainability Expo. And that will be an exhibition, a presentation to their fellow students who haven't been a part of what they've learned, and to explain and to promote some of the ideas that they've learned within a creative and an engaging way. So the SDGs are an important part of this work on global citizenship and creating global citizens in and creating global citizens as they graduate from our programs. But they're not the only factor that we need to be thinking about. We need to be preparing our students for the world that they will live in, and to be engaging in the world that they're currently living in as students. So there are a number of trends that are going on in the world, and most notably at the moment, obviously, the response to the pandemic and what the world is going to look like in the next few months and next few years as we deal with the impact of the pandemic and the associated economic challenges. We also we've seen in America, but also in Australia, where I live, the impact of Black Lives Matter, and how universities have had to think then about their engagement with their students, their engagement with their community, and the engagement with the world. But even before that time, there was a growing revolution in tertiary education, and that was started in many ways in South Africa and in Africa, in what was the Roads Must Fall movement and the Fees Must Fall movement, and the calls for university curriculum to be decolonized. Students students there and academics there are engaging with this idea of universities being a part of the society in which they are based. Students are coming to universities with a sense of their place in the world and an awareness of the inequities that they see around them. University needs to respond to this in a way that recognizes this. And one of the conversations that's being had and is beginning to be had in Australia is this idea of decolonization of the curriculum, decolonization of the university. And this relates to a variety of aspects of the university life, to recruitment, to fee setting, to the profile of staff, to reading lists that are being set, to curriculum, to research agenda. And the worldwide Black Lives Matter movement has further highlighted calls for curriculum review. And in Australia, debates about future funding, which are a response to the pandemic and a response to the economic hit that universities have taken from that. And they have highlighted conversations about who sets the curriculum, who decides what universities should teach, who decides what is the right content, and what is the right research agenda. And this also leads to research-informed teaching, and that's where the idea of promoting global citizens and the idea of teaching, of giving our students a moral sense of where they are in the world has to link as well, not just to our curriculum, but to our research agenda. And this again links back to this idea of the rankings and what's measured in the rankings. And as previously discussed, the methodology of the ranking of the impact rankings focuses heavily on research. And although the rankings don't really measure teaching, don't really look in any great detail at curriculum, it is crucial that teaching is informed by research, particularly in this area, particularly in the area of moral education and of the Sustainable Development Goals. So research that will be informed by the Sustainable Development Goals will include research on land, on water, on community, gender, and climate, among many other topics. And there's a significant appetite among students to be taught in these subjects, to have a university experience and to be taught by a university experience that is linked to the world that they're living in, and to be taught by academics who are leading researchers in those areas. The example that I have on this slide is colleagues in our school who are interested in urban heat, who are interested in how to mitigate the impact of the very hot summers that we faced in Australia on children as they attend school, as they play in playgrounds, and as they live in the communities. And it's just one example of how research excellence impacts both on teaching and on community engagement. We know from our experience as students and our experience as teachers and managers in universities that the best teachers will be researchers, but the best researchers will also be teachers, as they will want to ensure that their knowledge is transmitted to those who are most passionate about receiving that knowledge. If we are to be teaching, if the part of moral education, teaching our students to be global citizens, means that they will also have to have a global education experience. And education is something that is increasingly global. There is a movement of international conferences like this demonstrate the movement and the mobility of academics. We know that that students look globally for where they will study, and the Australian sector, it has shown over the last few months how dependent it is and how much it relies on international students, both for the student experience and the experience on campus, but also in terms of the funding models that are around. But we need to make sure that students also have, to be global citizens, that they have international experiences, they have the opportunity to be mobile, to experience different cultures, to experience different countries, and to see that reflected in the curriculum as well, to see that preparation for traveling globally, studying internationally, working internationally is something that fits in with their curriculum as well. And that's something that we've been working on very strongly, to be giving students the experience to work and study in Indonesia, in Nepal, in India, in the Pacific Islands. But that is something that has been challenged by the current circumstances. And this, I suppose, is my final slide, is to say that that global citizenship and having a sense of the world can also start with having a sense of your own community, of where you're living and where you're working. And graduates as global citizens, particularly where we are in Western Sydney, and particularly in the environment where we're living, which has a large immigrant population and a large refugee population, that part of a graduate being a global citizen is about an engagement in their own community. So the education, the moral education, the impact of the Sustainable Development Goals doesn't necessarily have to involve just learning about the ice caps or learning about things that are happening elsewhere in the world. It involves an engagement in the local community. And those approaches of engagement, of placements, of work integrated learning, of community development, both help us to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. But I would suggest that in the world that we're living in 2020 are exactly what society needs and are exactly the skills and engagement that we need from our students. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian, for this really inspiring talk. And we get some points here, very important point. If I can summarize the first way, about the Western Sydney University way in dealing with the SDGs and also the achievement in have times higher education impact ranking, for example, and more recent program. The second one is more recent program doing in WSU. And also some recommendation, for example, it's quite related with the in Indonesia and in UNY, for example, about the curriculum decolonization. I think this is very important for us, and also some recommendation about the research, informed teaching, something that will be useful. That before, thank you, Brian. Again, and before we go to the next speaker, I like to remind all the participants, if you have some questions, and then just please write down in the question and answer form, and we will collect, and then we will select some questions, and then we that give a direct question for the speakers. Okay, let's continue to the next speaker, Professor Komarudin Hidayat. He is a professor in philosophy of religion, and actually, and then professor working in Faculty of Psychology. Actually, I'm also following. Have been following some of his work, beginning from Tragedi Raja Midas, and also Passing Over, edited books, the Passing Over, and it's really inspiring, especially for me, then that also for the nation actually. And I think before we go with the Prof. Komarudin Hidayat, he will talk about the moral story of a pandemic. I think that's exactly the title of the work, moral aspect of the pandemic. And please, Professor Komarudin Hidayat, the time is yours.
Assalamualaikum.
Good evening, everybody.
Assalamualaikum. Waalaikumsalam, Prof. Komar.
Indeed, it is an honor for me to be invited in this very prestigious forum. And firstly, I would like to say that I'm very sorry if my presentation will not it doesn't meet the request of the committee. But later on, we can discuss about that. That is concerning the sustainable education. My topic I choose is moral aspect of pandemic. Yeah, because the committee asked me to talk about moral aspect. Okay, let's continue. Next, this. When we are talking about moral aspect, meaning that the question is, who is responsible for this pandemic tragedy? So we are asking the agent. Who is the agent that has responsible for this pandemic? It means it goes to, of course, to human being when we are talking about responsible. But some people may say that whether it is natural event tragedy, it goes to the nature. Or maybe it is a human responsibility, or it is God decision. So the question will goes to agent, the living agent, whether it is God or human being. I think it's because when we are talking about moral, it must address to someone that he is an agent, living agent. Okay, next. Yes, I think we agree. When we are talking about moral, it is human beings who are subject to moral law. Why? Because they have freedom and ability to choose what they want to do. Moral always presume and assume the idea of freedom. Without freedom, there is no moral judgment. Why? When someone doing voluntarily, it implies the moral responsibility, whether it is bad or good. So talking about moral, meaning that we are talking about good and bad, and it assumes there must be freedom for someone to choose what they want to do. When talking about freedom, again, it goes, of course, to human being, because human being has been endowed by God of freedom or liberty. Freedom, liberty is the highest gift from God we have in this life. Next. Bearing in mind that the pandemic has created so much fear and suffering for people, both sick and dead, it is understandable that the global community wants to know which country is most responsible
for the spread of COVID-19. It is logical and very understandable if someone raising the question, who is responsible? What country the most responsible? Even though it is not easy to find out the answer, but it is easy to understand when someone asking, who is responsible? That, well, there are so many thousand people get died because of COVID, so it is understandable to ask who is responsible in this tragedy. Next. Right now, I think health experts in various countries are competitive in competing to find out COVID responsibility. Even China, Indonesia, Italy, and America, and many other countries, they are now competing. Who are finding out the first time to serve to the people, to save the people from the COVID. And second, we show that there are also intelligences. Secretly, they are working, gathering the evidence. Who is responsible? Even though, again, it's not easy. Because why? Once country or people or nation is accused to be the spreader, the inventor, manufacturing the COVID, will got the huge implication politically and economically. And I think after the pandemic ended, there will be war of statement between many countries in the world. We will see later. Even now, I think little by little it starts already, but I think later there will be the great war of statement among many countries, especially within like China and United States maybe, and war is already started now, economically, politically, and now will be driven by the COVID-19. Okay. Next. Well, among the environmental activists accused that it is the industrial societies of taking part in this pandemic. Why? Because they have damaged the balance of nature. It is back to my first question, who is responsible of this tragedy? It is human being. Why? Some has damaged the balance of nature. And when it is seen from the theological point of view, one is, we know that we are very weak, very fragile before the nature, the such huge nature, even the very small COVID, we are human being very weak. But more than that, that according to the scripture, both Bible and the Quran, it is human being that has responsible to maintain the beauty of nature, and it is human being that can damage the nature. And next. Then, as if nature said, it according to the environmentalists, that nature said, all people, all human beings, you are our visitors on this earth. You need us. But really, we don't need you. So be a good guest. Be a good visitor. Without your presence, we will flourish in a good way, even better. So we need the nature, but actually nature doesn't need us. That according to the extreme environmentalists, we are actually depend on many things like the insect, worm, microbes, even grass, if those are died, they will die soon. But if we die, they will flourish even better than us. Meaning that actually we are very dependent on this nature. That's why, according to some people, this pandemic caused by the human being because they damage already the balance of nature. Next. But again, besides being seen as a tragedy, there are also many positive implications caused by the pandemic. So, pandemic, it's not only a tragedy, but it is bring out some blessing for us. What are that? Next. For example, there are many examples, but I just put one. School children and the community are now forced to learn to recognize and to enter the digital culture because they often stay at home and they have to stay at home to avoid corona transmission. Then they start practicing learning, long distance learning. It is, well, before we just discuss about the society 4.0, but now we are forced to recognize, to enter, to practice what we call digital culture. It is new life, new style caused by and forced by the pandemic. And again, next. Well, what most disturb, of course, besides some positive thing we can extend further, there are so many good examples caused by the pandemic. And now what most disturb the public is not only COVID-19, that's one another problem, yeah, but the emergence of unemployed people in a huge number. Now I heard that the rate of unemployment has reached about 30 million people. To overcome this problem, community and the state must work together. And now the people get aware that they cannot rely on the governments as their savior. Of course, it is the duty of government to protect the people, to protect the citizen, but the citizen as well, they now get aware that they cannot rely to the government to save their life. So the sense of cooperation to help each other, spirit of philanthropic, emerge amid this pandemic situation in the society. Next. Well, it is one more note what I have here, that humans as inhabitants of the earth have often been hit by tragedies, both natural and political disasters, such as world wars, for example. But humans can always survive. Even behind disaster emerge a new world order with new awareness and new perspective on nature and life. We know that after world war, for example, that the number, the event of the wars decreasing dramatically. Only small, well-state countries get involved in war against another. But in general, after World War, I think the number of war between state and state decreasing dramatically. Meaning that behind the tragedy, both natural and political, always there is emerge a new world order. And I think, and I'm sure that after this pandemic, we'll enter the new life with new way of thinking of our life. Next. So it's my last presentation, and we can discuss later on. I hope I can discuss further about education in Indonesia based on my experiences. I'm a product of pesantren, that is very traditional Islamic education in Indonesia, and it is one among the characteristic of education in Indonesia we can discuss later. And we can sustain actually in Indonesia whenever we can maintain, we empower the root, the character, the asset what we have, the so various type of education in Indonesia. So back to the moral issue. Moral issues are always related to intelligence and freedom possessed by humans here. For what purpose is used? Yes, since we have a human being as a freedom, so we have moral responsibility. Ideally, of course, if we have freedom intelligences, how to create mutual prosperity, goodness, beauty, and peace. The ideal purpose actually of life. We have freedom, we have intelligences, we have a heart, how to use those asset what we have, this blessing, this gift coming from God to create mutual prosperity, goodness, beauty, and peace. And this pandemic situation tragedy, it's driven society in the world and the global society how to strengthen sense of solidarity among human being. The last, I think I have still one PowerPoint, I think. Well, it is my last statement that we are living under the same sky, we are living under the same sun, and we are living on the same earth. Let's celebrate the gift of life by sharing love, cooperation, and building a meaningful life. It is the purpose, the basic values of all religions. I think also it is the very basic values that embraced by all civilization in the world to celebrate the gift of life by sharing love, cooperation, and to build a meaningful life. I think it's enough here. Then I hope we can discuss later, especially when we are discussing about the education in Indonesia. I hope I can share in this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Komarudin Hidayat. Okay, that's very reflective talk for us, and we need to think more deeply about this pandemic. And I think some points that I can summarize here. For example, that very important one is human beings are most responsible for this crisis, this pandemic, and because of the human beings' behavior and some consequences of human beings' attitude or behavior. And also the second one is about the positive and negative consequences. Even we have got a negative one, but we still have the positive ones. And also, yeah, the last one, the most important thing, I think, about the suggestion that we live in this, we live in the same earth, and we have the same problem that we can tackle together. I think if we can invite the King of Midas, I think, Prof. Komarudin, and then we can ask him to touch the virus to become gold. That's what the story about Midas that I inspired with from you. Okay, thank you again from Prof. Komarudin Hidayat, and then after this we can go straight with Ruth. Hello, Ruth. Are you there? Because we have we go quite earlier. Okay, hope you. Okay, I think you are there. Before Dr. Ruth Luix to present, that I would like to introduce Dr. Ruth. Dr. Ruth is a professor, associate professor at the Tilburg University at the Department of Sociology. At the same time, he is also the research fellow at the Nuffield College at the Oxford University, and also is a fellow at the University of Trento. This is quite busy actually to have mobility, and also his special interest and also about mobility and also about the survey, because he is one of the champion of European value study. Then if we are familiar, and he will share his idea about the European value study, because there in these European value studies, there is quite many question about the values, but moral, especially in Europe. I think that's we can learn from him and also his publication or his achievement. Okay, hello, Ruth. Hello. Okay, I think. Okay. Hi, Ruth. Yeah, I think it appears.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Ruth.
you. Hear me, do
Yeah.
you? Okay, good. Well, terima kasih. I'm very happy to be in Yogyakarta, but well, a bit unhappy it's virtual. I've been in Yogyakarta 33 years ago.
Wow.
Yes, a long time ago. And after I was a research fellow, visiting fellow at ANU in Australia, and then I spent a holiday on Java, and I remember the nice city of Jogja. My presentation will be slightly different, I think, of the other ones. It's more a presentation of a survey, but I want to reach out a bit to a more global perspective. Accents will be a bit more methodological, because I think it's rather important that as a research community, as universities, we use good data. And of course, there are many ways to get good data. But one of the ways is to do so by social surveys. And well, COVID-19, of course, is making all kinds of things more difficult. I mean, personally, I was teaching in Trento in Italy and left the country on March 8th, and Italy went into a lockdown in March 9. And when I arrived in Tilburg, I actually had to go in quarantine because I came from Italy. Then a week later, also the university here closed, and actually it's still closed. And we are teaching from a distance using this nice vehicle Zoom. And in a way, you can attend international conferences more easily now. And if you want to, you even can go to 2 international conferences, even at different continents at the same time. Okay. The European Value Study. It's a long story, actually. European Value Study started in 1981, and what you see here is, well, the pictures of 2 older white men, Ruud de Moor, the upper picture, and Jan Kerkhoffs in the lower picture. Ruud de Moor from the Tilburg University, then still called Catholic University in Tilburg, and Jan Kerkhoffs of the Catholic University in Leuven in Belgium. They started this longitudinal comparative research project. And the idea was to collect data across all European countries. And to do so, and increasingly do so, committing to the highest methodological standards. And I will repeat this several times because personally, and many with me, think that good research needs to be of a high standard. You need good samples so you actually can generalize your results to the bigger population. These data are freely available, so whoever wants to analyze them can analyze them. And if you talk about the theoretical intake of this, you may say it's modernization theory. How are societies changing when they modernize. Another angle, you may say, is Ron Ingelhardt's silent revolution, which is cohort replacements. I mean, people are born, people live, and people die. And the idea of Ron Ingelhardt and others is that, well, they get socialized relatively early in life, and then after that, they actually keep that same mindset to a certain extent. And so changes in society are to a large extent driven by the replacement of cohorts. Okay, we are covering European values, covering all kinds of life domains. Religion is an important one. Of course, it's Europe, so it's more focused to Christianity, morality, politics, family, society, work, things, issues, and welfare issues. Again, it started in 1981. Tilburg and Leuven took the lead, already presented the different domains, and I will show you there was an increasing international and regional coverage. Starting 81, 90, 99, 2008, 2017. In 1981, we had face-to-face interviews. So interviewers went to the houses to interview people, random samples, 1,000 or more per country, 18 plus as the age. And that's one issue that's important methodologically, identical translated questionnaires. I mean, Europe is not such a big continent, but there are many languages. So the original research questions were about what kind of value pattern is there in Europe? Is Europe a unity? That was an original question, right? Still an important issue. What about Christianity in European culture? Is there a coherent alternative? And this, in mind, this is the late 70s. The answer now is actually more or less no. And what will be the implications for European unity? And if you then look at the second wave in 1990, and you actually see that the number of countries that's dark is increasing. One of the nice things was 1990. In Europe, it was the fall of the Soviet Union, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the European Value Study was very lucky to actually have the opportunity to have surveys in Eastern Europe. Also, Ronald Ingelhardt more or less started then the World Value Survey that more or less developed from the European Value Study, and he started to replicate in more and more non-European countries. And then 1999, again a replication of the earlier surveys, but at the same time we added issues about solidarity, social capital, democracy, and work ethics. Okay. More countries again from Southern and Eastern Europe. And what you actually do see is that the parts that are not dark is Norway. Well, they didn't have the funds then. It's mainly former Yugoslavia, which was at war at that moment, and Switzerland and Moldova. 2008, all European countries, actually all of Europe is dark here, and the questionnaire was largely comparable to 1999. And so what you see actually is a kind of increasing number of countries being surveyed. At the moment, we are kind of finishing the fifth wave, as we call it. Started in 2017. Last countries are in the field at the moment. Again, we are still focusing at face-to-face interviews, so interviews going to the homes, but we also are developing more web surveys, and I guess web surveys is something that is important, all over the world, becoming much more important also, I guess, in Indonesia at some point. If you can reach people in a large area using the web, that's much cheaper and much more efficient. Random sample still, but bigger than in the beginning, 1,500, still translated questionnaires, and that's an important issue, I would also say, for our global perspective, cooperation with the World Values Survey. We do have a common core questionnaire in Europe and the rest of the world, and this common data set will be available in October of this year, and Indonesia is one of the countries included there. And so that not only gives you the opportunity to compare within Europe, but also compare globally, which I think is a very important issue. We are cooperating with the World Values Survey. Well, I can skip this quickly. It more or less shows in which countries we have EVS team, which country, and we are working together with WVS, and in which country only WVS did the survey. Just a short word about the World Values Survey. Again, I already mentioned it. It emerged from the European Value Study in the 1990s. In a way, it's as big as European Value Study. That they managed to have 40, 45 surveys outside Europe every wave, and they started having waves in 1995, and they repeat them more or less every 5 years. Overlap with us is about 60%, and we are very much into the harmonization between the two surveys. So all value surveys are online. We made a common dictionary for the variables, so you actually can merge EVS longitudinal files and WVS longitudinal files and make global comparisons. This is the status of the fieldwork at this moment in for our release at the moment. We had a couple of pre-releases, last one a couple of months ago. Some countries have their fieldwork completed, but are still not in the data set. Turkey and Portugal, and in Ukraine and Latvia, the fieldwork is under preparation, and Luxembourg, very small, but it's there. And unfortunately, we were not able to conduct a survey in Kosovo, Moldova, Belgium, and Ireland. Especially the last two countries is kind of a pity, because, well, they were in the European Value Study since the very beginning. Available data sets are pre-releases. Final release will be due in October 2020, including the global EVS-WS data set with a common dictionary. And just rather quickly, but also to give you some substantive input here, the values priorities across Europe, we call it religiosity. So the question here is percentage people saying they are a religious person. When it goes from light to dark, the darker the country is, the bigger percentage say they are religious. And you see a clear pattern, more or less, countries becoming more dark if you go south, southeast, and to the east. And this is 2017 data. Moral permissiveness, how well accepted are homosexuality, abortion, divorce, euthanasia, suicide. Low acceptance, very light, high acceptance, very dark. And here you see more or less the opposite, from the northwestern to the southwestern eastern part. Countries become lighter, and so less acceptance. Evaluation of democracy, more democratic in the northwest, and becoming less so if you go to the eastern part. If you ask about gender equality, opinions on working women, going from progressive to conservative, again, more or less the same palette, going from the left, more progressive, to the east, more conservative. Work values, work ethic, strong work ethic, weak work ethic, and here you see more dubious, more unclear patterns, so to say. How trusting are Europeans? Social trust. That's saying that most people can be trusted, and again, more in the northwestern part and in Spain, and less if you go east. Prejudice towards immigrants, again, more in the east and the south, and less in the northwest. Well, of course, and feeling concerned about living conditions of elderly, unemployed, and sick. Again, you see more or less the same pattern. This is just to give you a very quick first feeling about the data. And of course, if you are going to analyze this, you need much more complicated models than just presenting a univariate distributions. A bit about European Value Study. How is it organized? We have a council of program directors. Every country has a program director. There's an executive committee who runs the EVS on a daily basis. I'm a member of that as the chair of the methodology committee. We have a theory and a methodology group. Theory group was very active when they had to develop the questionnaire. Methodology group is still active to safeguard the quality of the project, and there's a foundation of EVS that plans and promotes joint activities and tries to fundraise money for those countries that cannot pay by themselves. I want to say a bit about how complicated it is to run a European survey, or also to run a global survey, or any survey where you have many countries, and especially also many languages. This is the complete overview of 2008. And what you actually see is that the number of languages in some countries is huge. One of the smallest countries, Luxembourg, actually has the most languages. Luxembourgish, German, French, Portuguese, and English. And what was the criterion here? The criterion here was if more than 5% of the population speak a certain language and doesn't speak other languages, then you have to field the questionnaire in that language. Now a bit about translation, classification, sampling, and fieldwork. First, translation. Well, as you all may know, translation is a big issue. I mean, if you say that somebody is happy, well, translate happy into Bahasa, and I guess you already may have the feeling that it has a slightly different connotation than the English happy, or the German glücklich, or the Dutch gelukkig, or the heureux in French, or etc., etc. So if you translate questions, it's important to think about what we call the functional equivalence. Just really measure the same thing. A literal translation may be a better translation. And to work that all out, we developed a translation management tool, a platform where all the translations were fed in. Every question had to be translated by 2 people. It has to be adjudicated. And if languages were shared by countries, for example, Dutch by the Netherlands and Belgium, German by Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Luxembourg, then also between the different countries, an adjudication had to be done. Classification is another thing, right? And if you think about the Indonesian educational system, and you compare that to the one of Australia or the Netherlands or Germany or US, and you see that these educational systems are not the same, they're different. So you have to kind of harmonize them to make classification that will fit for all the different countries, right? So you have to take into account that some systems are more general, other systems are more comprehensive, other ones are more vocational, some have vocational and comprehensive systems, etc., etc. Some have just universities, other ones have applied universities, for teaching schools, etc., etc. So you have to make a good coding of that. And the best way to do that is actually to make a detailed national coding. Another thing is about politics. I mean, left-right is a dimension that becomes more and more difficult, maybe in these times. But we have to kind of make a typology of the party. So if you ask people which party do you vote for or do you want to vote for, you actually have to make a kind of translation. Is that left or right, or is that a party that better scores on a different dimension, and how to take that up into your analysis. Income deciles are important. So, well, in some countries, the incomes are differently divided than in other countries. And there's also something which is called purchase power parity, right? What can you do for the buck, or for the rupiah, or the gulden, or whatever, right? And then we have religious denominations. And that's one of the things we are still working on. We are trying to make a kind of ontology, typology of all religions, and in this case, worldwide, and put them in a kind of framework so we can actually code religions in a good way. Sampling. Sampling is very important. Is a sampling representative, right? So where are you sampling from? Do you have the opportunity to use a national registry? Or if not, how are you going to do it? Municipal information. Are you using a random route, which is often done in other countries than in Western Europe? So a random route means you start at a certain point in a city or a place, and you know you have to go that and that and that direction, and then you enter in a building, or you're next to a building, and then you actually interview the oldest people there, or the people with the first birthday, or whatever. But we have to know how our sampling is going to actually make weights in the end, to make generalizable conclusions. Fieldwork, it's important to have a high response rate. If only 20% of the people participate, what can you do? You have to know why the 80% didn't participate. If there's selective non-response, for example, if people with certain values don't answer, or people with certain incomes don't answer, well, you have to take that into account. So it's very important to know the response rate and to do some kind of non-response research. Okay. If you do a big survey, it's a good thing to have a good management tool. And we were using MyEVS. Was launched in the summer of 2017. It's actually used by 126 people from 44 countries. They're working in 48 different workspaces, national teams, planning groups, temporary working groups, and people who are working on the web surveys and in different dissemination groups. One of the important things about surveys is that you not only develop a questionnaire and actually monitor how you're doing that and actually make an administration out of it, but also to have a good methodological questionnaire where the different country teams have to fill in all kinds of important information about the sampling, about the fieldwork, about the problems, etc. Well, dissemination is important, right? So this conference is very much geared towards education also. And now also what we are doing with European Value is actually thinking about that. So on the one hand side, we get our data, which are available for science, which are available for policymakers, journalists, and the general public, but also for education. So there's all kinds of data and documentation, and let me go a bit quicker here. There's all kinds of books. There's an Atlas of European Values, which is more for the general public, actually maps, and we actually present all the different outcomes. This is 2008, of course. A new atlas most likely will be around in a couple of years for the new wave. Societal relevance, scientific relevance, so important differences between countries and changes over time. There's a decline of religion, apparently, secularization. Gender roles are changing. So the realm of work and family is changing over time. Trusted civic participation is changing over time. Intergenerational solidarity, and which is also in Europe important at the moment, of course, is prejudice and tolerance and migration. A bit about education. What you see here is actually teaching materials are based on the European Value Study, but tertiary education, social sciences, teacher colleges, secondary schools, they have also civil society as one of the subjects. And we also do education, have lessons within primary education, where we actually use our questionnaire, ask kids what to think about it, and show them the differences between the countries. And one of the nice things here is what is called the Atlas of European Values. It's another atlas than the paper one, where we actually made in 6 languages an interactive website, and you can have a look at it if you're interested in, which can be used in secondary education, and where we use video material, where we interview kids about 15, 16, 17 years old, of different background, different religions, different social classes, and actually ask them the different questions about values, about morale, etc., etc. Well, let me kind of close this. So I showed you what we are doing, that we are not just scientists, that we want to cooperate globally, that we want to have an input in education at different levels. But an important thing is, where are we? And we can be read very broadly. Where are we in 5 years or 10 years' time in terms of viability and sustainability? And in this case, I'm more talking, of course, about sustainability of surveys. Surveys are very expensive. Depends also on, of course, of the country. I mean, in Norway, it's extremely expensive. In the Netherlands, it's expensive. In Eastern Europe, it's less expensive. But we are moving towards a new era where web surveys will be used. And so we have to develop common tools. We have to make sure that not everybody is translating all the time. Not everybody has to draw its own sample. Not everybody has to make new questions, but make it into question banks, do common sampling, do common translations. Also think about modernization and harmonization of the questionnaire. So if you look at the more recent questionnaire of EVS, and certainly of World Values Survey, you see that Millennium Goals, Sustainable Development Goals are playing a more important role there. Okay, so CERIS was a cooperation between different surveys. European Values Study was one of them, European Social Survey, SHARE, Gender Generation Program, to mention a couple of them. And this is actually the whole field of, and I guess the PowerPoint will be made available later on, the whole field of things. I mean, you make a questionnaire, you do field work, you have to manage that survey, you have to harmonize the data, and that's a complex thing, and it's time to make that as as solid and as fluid as possible. Okay. So web surveys, well, how to go into a new stage. It's always important, right? I mean, I guess we all think it's very important to have data that we can compare, right? I want to compare my data to your data. If you do the survey in Indonesia or you do it in Netherlands, you want to compare these two. And so you have to make the questions comparable. And that's an important and different process. Face-to-face surveys are more and more problematic, are more and more expensive, especially if you have a very big country, you have to go to, if you have to go all the way to Papua and Sulawesi and all the islands, for example. I mean, you may have an infrastructure in the different places, but it's becoming more and more difficult to go to all the places. So web surveys may be a good replacement at some point, but you still want to compare not only between countries, but also within countries over time, right? So if you want to compare the 1981 data with the 2017 data, and you change the setup, you go from face-to-face to web survey, you have to take that into account. So it's something you have to do step by step and to safeguard the quality, the validity of the time series over time. Okay, so we have to cooperate more. We have to keep the time series. We are working hard in Europe to have links with other European surveys. But we also are working hard and want to work harder in the future by reinforcing our global links with the regional and global surveys. So World Value Survey, which is the closest sibling, so to say, but also with the Asian and the East Asian, Latino, African, South African barometers. We had some meetings already with all these surveys together. And the idea is actually to work more together and to try to integrate the questionnaires better so we can actually make better comparisons over time. Well, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That would be my message. And thank you very much for your attention. And here are some contact information of our survey. And I will now stop sharing the screen and give the word to Adi again.
Thank you very much. Thank you well. Good for this insightful talk, actually. And thank you for presenting quite detailed for the European Value Survey, actually. This is three things that I can get from your talk. At least this is this is invitation for us, even we are not Europeans, but we can share about the. I mean, we can get some insight from Europe about the values. Even we can have data from World Value Survey, including the comparability with Indonesia, then compare with Indonesia and East Europe or Western Europe. And also the second one, if even Ruud is not directly relate this talk about the SDGs, I think this is quite important to, to monitor SDGs. It is for my point of view. I mean, it's not your talk actually, but this monitor SDGs by using data. For example, if we can know, if we want to understand about the trust, if we understand about health and religiosity, and it also gender equity, and then we can see the survey results around the world. And the last one that it is quite inspiring as well about the providing the provision of the teaching materials for secondary school, even primary school, and to teach about the social insight that they can face in everyday life. This is, I think, a very interesting idea, and then to teach our young generation, I think, our students to be more global oriented vision. I think. Thank you very much for this, all of this, and we have some questions here. I will, yeah, this is from Professor Ajat Sudrajat. This is a list of questions actually. Is the university or department given the freedom to organize the curriculum according to in accordance with the SDGs? And then this is the first one, and the second one for especially it is a special question for Brian. What do you think about the compatibility between neoliberal agenda on education supported by OECD, IMF, and World Bank and SDGs? This is quite okay. Provoking question, I think. And the third one from Dr. Wuri Handayani. What is the general indicators of gender equality? This is I think the three questions. The fourth one is special question for Brian and also the other panelists. Let me check because it is the question is hidden. Hello. What practical moral skill for students to keep sustaining develop education and graduated as the global citizen? I think this is the last discussion proposed by Hood as well, to teach students to be more global vision and to be more global vision. Please, I think the first one for Brian.
Or for me, so I'll maybe, I've taken slide down. I'll maybe give it a go, but I think I can remember them. The first question was about the freedom to develop the curriculum. Within our own university, there is a moderated freedom. So the units are owned by the unit coordinator, so they will develop their own material. But at school level, there is a discussion about whether a particular unit fits in with a curriculum for a program, and then any significant changes will go to university body as well. We also have a number of programs in social work, psychology, planning, many others that are accredited programs, and so accrediting bodies will then have a significance to speak into curriculum. What I would say though about the SDGs is it is a university-led initiative to incorporate the SDGs into curriculum. So from the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Learning and Teaching and their work and their funding for developing some of what I talked about sub-majors and pods and boot camps and all of those things. So although there is a freedom to do that, there's a very clear direction from the university about that this is something that we are prioritizing, and I suppose the freedom comes in exactly how it all fits together and which aspects of the SDGs fit in with particular programs. So there's a combination of freedom and some leadership. The second question, it's an interesting one. I think anytime you talk about rankings in universities, then I think that becomes a legitimate question about a neoliberal agenda and the idea of universities being judged in terms of their performance and their achievements. And what we know about the rankings is that they do perpetuate a status. So the universities that are the wealthiest wealthiest universities that can invest in research infrastructure, that can perhaps buy top researchers to come in at ranking time to boost their scores. All of those things I think could easily fit within a neoliberal agenda, and absolutely the international marketization of universities can fit in with that agenda as well. What I would say about the SDGs is it is, I suppose, up to us in how we engage with them, and if we can engage with these ideas of no poverty, of quality education, of good health, reducing inequalities in an open and fair way, then I think that we can forge our own agenda in light of the goals. And I think particularly a comment that I touched on at the end was about community-led engagement. So the work of the SDGs does involve engagement with local community groups, and that's where universities can get involved in terms of creating evaluation structures, research projects, student placements, all those sorts of things. So I think the SDGs can serve a neoliberal agenda, but they don't have to. We can engage with them, bringing our own morality, our own ethics, our own perspective. To that third question, general indicators of gender equality. A couple of things there. One of them is, if we're looking at particularly impact rankings, the indicators are about research citations, the journal publication, all those fairly traditional academic measures. And so one of the reasons why we would do well in gender equality is that we've invested in a lot of gender researchers, lots of people who are publishing papers with keywords that link to gender equity. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is about what I talked about before, about certification within the country, about our approach to gender equity. So things like SAGE, which is about promoting women in science, ideas about how the employment strategies, promotion support, the gender makeup of our leadership in the organization, so and the work that we do in communities as well. So it is bringing all those aspects together. So having researchers who are interested in that area, but also the organizational approach to gender equity. I think those things link all together. And finally, practical moral skills to keep sustained development. I would say that there isn't really one moral skill that I would say to keep sustaining development future education. What I suppose I would say, and I use that phrase of global citizenship, it is a combination of an awareness of your impact on the world. And your impact on the world is both in terms of the community that you are currently working in, and but also the world more generally, and the decisions that you make, and particularly thinking about students, the career you choose, how you choose to go about using these skills and knowledge and these advantages that you have in serving a better world. But I think what I would also say would be, some of it is about applying the skills that you have. So it's not about specific skills for the sustained development. It is about using the skills that you have to achieve that. So whether you're trained as an engineer, whether you're trained as a social worker, whether you're trained in medical science, there are ways of using those skills, using those qualifications and opportunities that come from that will help you to contribute to the sustainable development goals and contribute positively to the world.
Okay, thank you. Prof. Okay, and I think the fourth question, it can be, Prof. Komarudin and also Ruth, could you respond this question?
I can answer later after Prof. Ruth. Prof. Ruth,
Okay.
silakan. Nanti aku belakangan ingin dengarkan aku.
No, go ahead. Please.
Okay. Answer? Well, okay, thank you very much. In Indonesia, now I think that the moral which is based on local wisdom, to some extent now absorbed by the religious formula or religious teaching. That's why for me actually I want that in the future we will have what we call moral public. In Western society they call it as like a civic religion, civil religion or civic religion. But if we use that term in Indonesia, many people will, well, maybe attack this question, what kind of religion it is. So maybe it's better to use that is moral public, that is based on the local wisdom, based on the values well, it is expressed in Pancasila, but so far that the religious teaching and yes, religion too much enter the public school. Public school should be inclusive. It is belong by many different group of religions, but so far certain religion dominated in public school. It is not good for I think for the future of this nation, because public school mean it is owned by the public, not by the certain group of religious community. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Komarudin. Okay, I think Hood. Just pass on you.
Yes, also, I mean, in general in the Netherlands, but also for Tilburg University, if you would go to their website, to our website at the moment, you will see Tilburg University responsible and enterprising thinkers, right? So it's very important to have this responsibility and also if you are going to become an entrepreneur. I mean, Tilburg started as a Department of Economics, and so a lot of them go into business, but if you go there, you should be a responsible person. I mean, in the Netherlands, there's a kind of complete separation, is it, between church and state, so to say. It's also of education. So that there's no religion going into the educational programs, at least not at the university level. But if things go on, I mean, in general, like now with Black Lives Matters and Me Too, I mean, you see that of the university and the students and the staff takes a position there. And I think morality and to be a good human being, to be a good person is actually something that is around in the whole program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for this four question actually, and also the second part is about the calculation. I mean, the positive and negative effect of the COVID pandemic. This is a special question for Professor Komarudin Hidayat, and this is a negative and social aspect. And could you, I mean, elaborate more detail about that? And also, it is about the COVID-19 when we talk about the significant and fundamental change in pattern of community life and in large scale social restriction and lockdown policy. And I mean, how to, this is the more question about project, the significant and fundamental change to pattern the community life. I think that's the second question, and the third one is, I think you have answered that before. Yeah, please, Prof. Komarudin, for answering that two questions, I think.
Explaining what I'm experiencing and I observe to my neighbors and families. First, that by staying at home, that many children should study at home through long distance learning. Many parents became aware that it is not easy to be a teacher, not easy to teach their children. That's why now they became more aware and appreciate to the profession of teacher, because it is not easy. And second, that there has been selective natural selection. Many schools are ready how to implement long learning distance, but some are get messy, they are not ready. So many of the school that are so huge in number, they left behind, and I'm afraid maybe it is too hyperbolic that will be a lost generation, but maybe it is hyperbolic. But again, what I want and what I see, I observe that there are many schools, many families that they are not ready, and the government doesn't serve the equipment what the people need, like internet and Wi-Fi and so on. So not only school, not only parents, but the government also, they're confused, they're not ready how to manage, how to handle the implication of pandemic to the educational field. And second, now who are the backbone of the national economic in this country? It is actually the farmer. The agriculture sector became the backbone of the national economy. Who does serve the rice and so on to the rich people? They're coming from the middle, lower economic and the farmer. But you know, during the normal situation, when the harvest season arrived, the price of the rice then became lower and cheaper than by the great and the big trader. But now we should appreciate to the farmer that actually we depend on them, our life, because the basic need now is how to get enough rest and enough food. We don't need hotel, we don't need many other things that it has been so luxurious that became so unhygienic. But now what we need is come to and back to the basic need, that is food. And again, it is the farmer actually as a backbone. Well, other thing that I observe to my surrounding families, many parents now they teach their children, their kids how to donate to help others. So sense of cooperation, sense of philanthropic, it is well raised and educated, and it is done by many parents as a part of education for their children. So it is good actually for some families how to use this pandemic, this tragedy, to educate their children to flourish the sense of philanthropic for others. One other thing, the last thing I would like to share here is that among the religious people, we can divide into two groups. One is take the fatalistic attitude that everything it is depend on God. We should not afraid to Corona. We should only afraid to God, because that it is in the hand of God. So we don't care about COVID. Why? Because when afraid of COVID that will be died because COVID, it is not legitimate according to religion, because it is in the hand of God. But second group, it is the larger one. Well, yes, we believe to God that the life and death, it is at the hand of God. But God already give a freedom to us. That's why we believe, we appreciate the scientific approach to the Corona. We ask, we believe, we listen what the medical science advise to us, but at the same time also we pray to God. So there is balancing, balanced attitude between belief to God and belief to the scientific or explanation according to them, how to treat ourselves against the COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Komarudin. And yeah, that's I think last question. If there is there any question? I mean, this, yeah, I think that's all. Thank you for very awakening questions. And before we end this session, I think let me give some highlights of this plenary session. And I think, okay, the first one, yeah, the bit moral education. I think we need to put moral education, and then we can get get insight from the religion to have a good moral education, because this is fundamental, and also to avoid to avoid the fatalistic point of view. I think that's what I'm trying to summarize. And the second one is how to incorporate the SDGs perspective into the curriculum, the university, and the study program. And third one is how to adopt some teaching material from other sources, even is quite large scale. We can have data sets as presented by Ruth about the European values, and also the last one, this is time to give. I think, for example, that when Professor Komarudin asked us to have doing philanthropic activities and then giving to others, and then I think not only this is also the blessing for the COVID-19. I think that's all that we have very interesting, insightful, and inspiring ideas, and then we have in this session. I think before we finish this session, I think Prof. Brian or Prof. Komarudin or Ruth would give final remarks. That please.
So thank you for the opportunity to. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be at this conference. I think it's very interesting, and well, undoubtedly there will be many interesting presentations tomorrow morning. But tomorrow morning is night here, so that will be hard to follow. So yeah, thank you very much. Terima kasih banyak.
My comments are the same, just to say thank you for very much for the invitation. It's been a pleasure to be a part of this conference, to hear the other excellent presentations, and I wish you well for the rest of the event.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Prof. Komarudin, I think the final remarks.
In Yogyakarta, that's why I put my background. It is Merapi, Mountain Merapi.
Exactly.
And yes, I was longing to enjoy Gajah Mi Yogyakarta.
Okay. Yeah, that's all. I think thank you very much for joining this conference, and that really insightful again. And we are happy to have all of you here. And we will finish soon, actually. But before we finish, we will have a token. We'll have token for all of you. This is a token because this is a virtual token, actually. Then we have this one. This is for Brian. Yeah, we have this sketch for you, Brian, and we call Matur Nuwun Sangat. Thank you very much, indeed, Brian. This is special for you. And also for Professor Komarudin Hidayat, This background is Prambanan now, it's not Merapi, as you use. Yeah, this is for you, Professor Komarudin Hidayat, with the Prambanan. The background is Prambanan, it's not Merapi. Yeah, and also this is for Hood. I think we will welcome you to come again to, in Yogyakarta, and soon. I think next year. I think you can come to Yogyakarta.
Look forward to that. Well, it's a nice picture. So where did you get this? Or it's my glasses, and I'm presenting somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Well done.
Okay. Okay. Again. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed, and I will pass on this time to the MC, please. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Hadirin, demikian tadi penyampaian materi dari 3 pembicara. Dan selanjutnya kami informasikan untuk hari kedua yaitu paralel sesi akan dimulai pada pukul 9 via Zoom. Untuk link Zoom akan kami sampaikan melalui email Bapak Ibu. Selain itu untuk sertifikat akan kami kirimkan melalui email Bapak Ibu apabila Bapak Ibu sudah melakukan pembayaran dan mengikuti acara konferensi internasional dari tanggal 4 hingga tanggal 5 Agustus tahun 2020. Baiklah Bapak Ibu peserta konferensi internasional, izinkanlah kami selaku pembawa acara untuk menutup acara pada hari ini. Terima kasih atas perhatiannya.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the plenary session of the conference. Please be well informed that the parallel session will be held tomorrow at 9 a.m. via Zoom. The link of the Zoom meeting will be sent to your email. And the conference certificate will be sent via email for those who have participated in the conference in the first and the second day of the conference, and those who have made a payment of the conference. Finally, we would like to say thank you for your participation and attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.